Welcome to the Wellness Roundtable, a new podcast created by the Global Wellness Institute. This is Season 1, Longevity, and I'm your host, Alexia Brue, an exited media founder turned longevity entrepreneur. Together, we'll explore the scientific and societal frenzy around all things longevity, examining whether it's a golden age or a gold rush. Before we get started, we'd like to thank our partner, Fountain Life, for supporting this podcast. When was the last time you really thought about your health before something went wrong? We're living in an age where science and technology have unlocked the ability to detect disease before it shows symptoms and take action when it matters most. That's the foundation of Fountain Life, a visionary longevity center co-founded by Tony Robbins, Peter Diamandis, and Dr. Bill Kapp. They've brought together some of the world's most advanced minds in medicine to flip the healthcare model from reactive to proactive. Fountain Life is redefining what it means to take control of your health using AI-powered multimodal diagnostics that go far beyond the standard checkup and inform a personalized optimization plan designed to maximize your vitality and extend your health span. Fountain Life has been a trusted partner of the Global Wellness Institute for many years, and we share the common mission to empower health and wellness worldwide through proactive medicine, scientific innovation, and technology. This is the future of healthcare, and you don't have to wait for it. So choose to live without limits. Head to fountainlife.com to learn more. That's fountainlife.com, because a healthy person has 100 dreams, but a sick person has only one. What if the second half of life could be your most powerful chapter? In this season finale, I sit down with Chip Conley, hospitality icon, bestselling author, and founder of the Modern Elder Academy. Chip reframes midlife as the longest and most vital stage of life, stretching from 35 to 75. Before focusing on midlife, Chip had founded the pioneering boutique hospitality brand Joie de Vie. And then he went on to help Airbnb scale from a scrappy startup to a global giant as its head of global hospitality and strategy, though unofficially he was known as the Modern Elder. Today, Chip is regarded as one of the world's most influential voices on midlife and aging well. Through the Modern Elder Academy, which is the world's first midlife wisdom school, Chip has guided thousands of people through life transitions. In our conversation, Chip reveals why your 40s can feel like unraveling, why happiness bottoms out around 45 and then climbs for decades, and how a single mindset shift about aging can add over 7 years to your life. We dive into the workplace of the future, where 5 generations are working side by side, and why age diversity is so critical to a team's success. Chip shares how to turn wisdom into a workplace superpower, how to create collaborative intergenerational teams, and how to design midlife as a chrysalis rather than a crisis. Please join me for our last episode on the ultimate longevity markers. Of course, we're talking about meaning, purpose, and community. I'm absolutely delighted to have Chip Conley join the Wellness Roundtable today. Welcome, Chip.
Oh, Alexia, it's great to be here.
We've been connected through the Global Wellness Institute for many years, but I think this meeting is long overdue. So the longevity field is taking shape, right, into this new arena or industry with goals in many ways similar to the wellness movement. And I'd love to get your perspective as the differences between wellness and longevity.
Oh, I love that question. So I would say it depends on how you define wellness. I define wellness quite broadly. Often people think of wellness as just a physical thing, but I think there's emotional wellness and social wellness and spiritual wellness. And to me, wellness is the full holistic vitality of living a life that is flourishing. And if you do that, it is one of the primary ways to extend your life. My belief system is that the physical side of it is just part of the equation. And what I've really spent the last 7 or 8 years focused on is the science of longevity, both the physical and social science, along with the art of living. Because I think if you can combine physical science, social science, and the art of living, that is a pathway to living a longer and healthier life.
So wellness is sort of like the input and longevity is the output?
Yes, exactly.
I think it's super helpful to define terms. And I think a lot of people in the wellness space are trying to dig into that question. So that's great. I want to zoom out now and look at the phases that comprise a person's life and jump into that framework that you've created around those different life phases and how they've changed with increased life expectancy.
Yeah. So when you look at the 20th century, and I'll use the US data, but the data is very relevant globally. We saw 30 years of additional longevity in one century. So the average of life expectancy in the year 1900 was 47, and it grew to 77 by the year 2000. During that century, we had three new life stages emerge. It wasn't like they weren't there before. They were, but they just didn't really have a voice or even language. The first one was adolescence. 1904, a book was written on that topic. Prior to 1904, when you hit puberty, you were considered an adult, which is why people would work in the mines at age 14 and maybe get married at 16 and have children before they were 18. And then adolescence became a thing, and all of a sudden adulthood moved to 18. And so from that came all kinds of public junior high schools and high schools, child labor laws, etc. In the 1930s, retirement became a thing because of the Great Depression and Social Security and pensions, and later retirement communities, AARP and the like. But the third life stage emerged in the 20th century, emerged primarily because of longevity. We didn't really have midlife in the year 1900 because the average age was 47, or life expectancy was 47. So no one talked about midlife. It wasn't really till the 1960s that midlife became a concept. And that was really because a Canadian psychologist coined the term the midlife crisis, which has gotten all kinds of funny late night jokes, etc. But midlife is a life stage that is very relevant. It's by far the longest of these three life stages that emerged in the 20th century. Many sociologists now think it lasts from 35 to 75 in a world in which more and more people are living till 90 or 100. And yet it's such a misunderstood life stage. And so what I really have tried to spend the last few years doing, based upon my own personal experience of struggling through midlife, but also losing 5 male friends to suicide, ages 42 to 52, I've really wanted to understand midlife as a life stage beyond the silly term midlife crisis, to understand what's going on during this era and how can we improve and demystify and elevate and maybe create some positives around this life stage that is the Rodney Dangerfield of life stages.
It's fascinating how long this midlife or midolescence lasts. I like that framing of it. How did you come up with 35 to 70?
75 even. So first of all, let's talk broadly. Midlife is the life stage between early adulthood and later adulthood. So to really understand midlife, you have to understand, when do you think early adulthood ends? And it used to be 18 to 30. Now people say 18 to 35. So if you're moving out of early adulthood, you're moving into middle adulthood. So 35 is where it starts. And then on the other side, when does later adulthood start? Well, it depends on the person. For some people, it might start as early as 55 or 60. Certainly 50 years ago, that's when you thought it started. But today, with a growing number of people living till 90 or 100, later life may not start till around 75. A growing percentage of the population is actually working into their 70s by choice or necessity. So I think there's 3 stages to midlife. There's 35 to 50, which is early midlife. This is the hardest time of midlife. It's actually, quite frankly, when you're the most busy. It's when you're the most disappointed. It's when Brené Brown, who's become a friend, calls it the midlife unraveling. A lot of your expectations of your life and how you have curated your life starts to unravel. So 35 to 50 is a rough time. And the U-curve of happiness research shows that 45 to 50 is the lowest point of life satisfaction as an adult. And then 50 to 60 is the core of midlife, in my opinion. It's frankly a decade where you start to feel some freedom from expectations of others, freedom from obligations of being a sandwich generation, taking care of both parents and kids, freedom from maybe some of the financial obligations you felt in your 40s, freedom from successism, which is trying to live up to someone else's definition of success. And so something starts to actually stir in you. And again, the U curve of happiness does show that our 50s, we start to see an incline in happiness, which continues on for many decades. And then 60 to 75 is later midlife. And that's when you really are in this sort of liminal time, transitional time, before you go into later adulthood. It's when you're sorting through questions of retirement and your career. At that point, most women have gone through menopause, men have gone through andropause. They don't even know they've gone through it. And that 60 to 75 period is when you're really starting to have maybe bigger questions about your role in the bigger scheme of things. Questions about meaning and purpose. Spiritual curiosity tends to be growing during that time. And so that's midlife, 35 to 75.
And on this topic of growing while you're aging, and I love how you write, just as you start to feel comfortable in your own skin, it starts to sag, which is very true. A great Chipism. But you write about some of the superpowers that come after 50 and just talking about that ability to see around the corner. And I'd love to hear how you've seen people through MEA or in your own life start to tap into what a sort of more vintage brain can do.
Vintage brain, yes. Well, first of all, let's be honest. The societal perspective on aging, especially in the United States, is just awful. If there was a bumper sticker, it would be just don't do it. And there's a whole anti-aging industrial complex, mostly dedicated to making women feel badly about their natural process of aging. So I just think that what we really need to do is have a pro-aging message as well. And that doesn't mean we want to age more quickly. We want our skin to look badly. We want to die earlier. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is I want to actually amplify some of the things that get better with age, the unexpected pleasures of aging. And Becca Levy at Yale, who's worked quite closely with us, has shown that when people shift their mindset on aging in midlife from a negative to a positive, they gain 7.5 years of extended longevity. And so there's a real sort of biological benefit to this as well. So what gets better with age? In fact, that's the subtitle of my book, Learning to Love Midlife, 12 Reasons Why Life Gets Better with Age. I'll give you a half dozen briefly. Number one is emotional intelligence grows with age. We're better able to metabolize life. We are less emotionally reactive. We value social relationships more. And in fact, the number one variable for living a longer, healthier, happier life is how invested are we in our social relationships in midlife and beyond. I call it social wellness. And I think social wellness is a really important part of our lives. We tend to get very focused on our own physical wellness. And it's about the I of wellness, like my sleep, my nutrition, my exercise. But the word illness starts with the letter I, and the word wellness starts with the letter we. And so social wellness is a really important part of this. And as we get older, we value those social relationships more. And we actually have some time affluence that allowed us to spend more time in our relationships. Wisdom grows with age. Now, that doesn't always mean that a 70-year-old is wiser than a 30-year-old. But the raw material for wisdom is life experience. And we have more life experience as we get older. And, having started the world's first midlife wisdom school, MEA, Modern Elder Academy, wisdom is a very interesting topic to me and one that I think is going to get a lot more attention in the era of AI because human wisdom can be the balance to artificial intelligence. What else gets better with age? Well, we actually understand ourselves better. We know our narrative, who we are and why we're here on earth. We might even, if we're lucky, understand the gift we have to offer the world. And that's something that we learn more as we get older. We're much better able to edit as we get older. The first half of our life, we're accumulating. The second half of life, we're editing. We move from the operating system of our life being the ego, which very much served us early in life by individuating us, but then we overused it. And around age 50, as Richard Rohr, the Christian mystic who's on our faculty, suggests, we shift the operating system from the ego to the soul, but nobody told us. And there's no operating instructions. But we start being more curious, maybe a little more introverted, maybe liking to spend more time in nature, maybe going back to some religious or spiritual beliefs that we had earlier in life that we had just not given much attention to. So those are the kinds of things. Those are maybe a half dozen of the 12 different reasons why life gets better with age. And I'm proud to say that I am a midlife activist who is helping people to own their age and feel better about it.
I love that. And it would be interesting to think about some people that have come through MEA. how they have leaned into these sort of new superpowers of wisdom professionally, because so many people, as they go through midlife, you can feel irrelevant, the technological change and ageism in the workplace and so on. So what are some of those inspiring stories that you've seen?
So many. MEA we have workshops every week of the year, both in Santa Fe and in Baja. And there's usually about 24 people in a workshop. And in the very first year we opened, 2018, I'll never forget an African-American social worker, 62 years old, 5 feet tall, from Atlanta. She had a lot of purpose, but not a lot of money. And then there was a 6'5" white investment banker from New York who was 45 years old and was retired. He had made a lot of money, but had very little purpose. And during the course of the week, these two people who are unlikely to have become good friends in normal life became best buddies because she knew a lot about purpose. He knew a lot about money. And over the course of a week together, they really learned from each other because wisdom is not taught, it's shared. And it's shared based upon sharing life experience. And so the two of them are still very close as a result of that. There was a litigator, a 60-year-old litigator who came to MEA 2 years ago to a cultivating purpose workshop. She hated being a litigator, but she was really good at it and she made good money at it. And she knew she wanted to work another 10 years. She was single. She had 3 kids, but she felt like she wanted to work for her whole 60s. She was in good shape health-wise, but she was really being weighed down by the fact that she was going into the courtroom constantly arguing as a litigator. So she came to MEA thinking, I'm going to go become a litigation consultant instead. But by the end of the week, she realized she tapped back into a passion and a purpose she had when she was a kid, which was baking. She used to bake with her grandmother, bake pies. And by the end of the week, she made a commitment to herself that she was going to go to pastry school, which she did on Saturdays for 3 months. And then she decided, I'm going to actually leave the legal profession and become a bakery entrepreneur and a pastry chef. And that's what she's done. And that wouldn't have happened without the cast of having some tools that we were able to give her. So the stories are endless, having had 7,000 people go through the program. But I think the basic fundamental of all of this is that people have more options than they think they do. And what we need to do is help them to see those options and then have a roadmap and some tools around navigating transitions, cultivating purpose, learning how to own your wisdom, and reframe your relationship with aging. And if we can do that, what we do is we create not just happier people, but people who are probably going to live an additional 7.5 years. And because of that, we have 58 regional chapters around the world now.
That's amazing. So I love that number of 7.5 years just by changing our mindset, thinking more positively about aging. And I think we're seeing the longevity movement really try to push even further against the ceiling of lifespan. And there's another big debate in the longevity space around whether or not aging is a disease to be cured. And I can't resist asking you that question.
It's a funny, I sort of feel like I'm meant to have a debate on this with someone at some point. Let's be clear that there's not an easy answer. I don't think it's a yes, no. Is it a disease? Is it not? Senescence, which is what happens with our cells. There are things that get worse with age that are quite physical in our lives. And so in some ways you could say aging is a disease or it's like a disease. The reason I struggle with the idea of calling it a disease is because it is universal. So something that's universal, meaning maybe this is going to change, but for right now, aging is a universal thing. And something that's universal is not a disease, because a disease is something that affects a certain percentage of the population. So that's one challenge with the idea of the disease scenario. Another is that it exclusively focuses aging on the physical side of aging. It is missing the social, the cultural, the intellectual, the spiritual. And in these other areas other than the physical, aging can be a real benefit in life and can extend life based upon your mindset. So I struggle with the idea of aging being considered a disease because of the fact that it is actually specifically and exclusively focusing on the physical side of aging. So we have old growth forests and redwood forests out there in the world. And I think we have old growth humans. And I think that aging and growth are the same thing. It's just that when you talk to a 15-year-old, you say, Johnny, I haven't seen you in 2 years. My, how you've grown. You'd never say that to Johnny when Johnny's 55 years old, because he'd think you're talking about his waistline, which is probably true. But I think the key is to know that like we are growing in all kinds of ways throughout our life, just like we're aging as well.
And obviously this quest for immortality is not, a new phenomenon, but we're now seeing with the longevity movement, it's becoming more practical, right? Where you've got these moonshot companies backed by whether it's Sam Altman or Jeff Bezos trying to create these drugs that slow or even reverse aging. And you're seeing these schools of thought emerge around health span and whether the goal is really to just improve the quality of life versus those in the Brian Johnson camp who are really trying to reverse it. And would love to dig a little deeper on what you think between the health span focus versus the real lifespan extenders.
Well, it's again, just too focused on the physical side of things. I don't want to beat up on Brian Johnson's too much. But I will say when you hear him on a podcast and hear how regimented his life is and how he doesn't have really space for a girlfriend and how he lives his life almost out of a test tube, there's just this weird sense like someone might have a health span, but does they have a joy span? I mean, he doesn't seem very joyful. And what's very interesting is that most of the people focused on living forever or reversing aging, most of them are men, the vast, vast majority. And it's remarkable how many of them are around the age of 50. All these folks, Brian Johnson, Peter Attia, Andrew Huberman, Tim Ferriss, Dave Asprey, they're all within 2 or 3 years of 50 years old. So my opinion on this is that this is just the new form of a midlife crisis. The midlife crisis used to be about men going out and buying a red sports car and having an affair with their 20-year-old secretary. But today, the midlife crisis is about the idea of reversing aging. And I don't want to be too flippant. I don't mind being a little snarky, but I don't want to be too flippant because I do believe that a lot of the work that's going on in terms of reversing aging and in terms of improving health and lifespan, it's good work being done. The problem I have with it is that it's so male dominated, as if, guys are seeing who can have the longer life, or as if it's some weird, I'm not going to go there, but you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. It's all about length, but not about depth. And, I think depth is as important as length when it comes to how we live our lives. And I also just think at the end of the day, it shouldn't just be for rich white dudes, rich straight white dudes. I mean, even be more politically fucking correct here, because I find it a little bit like this new elitist club. And I would love to say, well, how are we extending that lifespan to Native Americans? I live in New Mexico most of the time now. The average life expectancy for Native Americans is lower than people in Afghanistan. It's less than 64 years old here for Native Americans. So Peter Attia and Andrew Huberman, please come to New Mexico and help people on the Native reservations to understand how to extend their lifespan.
Yeah, you touch on a huge issue and what's going on and the equity, and pointing out it is a very narrow band of demographic that is spearheading this whole movement. And the new red sports car, you could say, is your new exclusive supplement stack or blood boy.
Or your ice bath, But let's be clear. Brian Johnson spending $2 million a year on reversing aging and his Don't Die movement. You know what? Good for him. This is his way of having a legacy, his way of making the world a better place. It's just not my way. And I don't want us to all think that's the only way for someone to actually feel a sense of purpose. Listen, if someone else's legacy is to go into the inner city, working with youth there and feeling a deep sense of purpose by actually changing the lives of people there, then that's going to be your legacy. And I will tell you that kind of purposefulness and social wellness that you have will actually extend your life.
Totally. And as we think about the demographic trends and the decreasing birth rate and people living longer, we're going to have more modern elders on this planet, right? So I would love to tap into your wisdom on what that looks like in the workplace. But we're also going to have people staying in the workplace longer, right? As we look towards life expectancy of 90 and beyond. So what is your advice on how to make intergenerational workplaces be really successful?
Yeah. Well, my experience at Airbnb, 7 years there, as someone who is twice the age of the average employee there, was really interesting. I wrote a book about it called Wisdom at Work, The Making of a Modern Elder. What we need to know are the following ingredients. Number one is we have 5 generations in the workplace for the first time.
That's amazing. I mean,
yeah.
just to pause on that for a second.
Yeah, we've never had that before. Number two, and here's an even more amazing statistic. By the year 2027, the U.S. Department of Labor says the majority of Americans will have a younger boss. We've never seen that before either. And then 75% of millennials say they'd like to have a mentor, but only 1% actually have one. Deloitte shows that when a millennial has a mentor in the company, they are more than twice as likely to stay in the company at least 5 years or longer. So those are a bunch of data points that lead to the following. Number one is we need to learn how to work across generations much more effectively. And there's different ways of communicating across generations. There's different words. Some people like texting. Some people like Slack. Others like email, face-to-face. So coming from the place of being curious and respectful about how I'm going to learn from someone else is the frame that we should all be using. There's something to be learned from everybody. When I was at Airbnb, I had over 100 mentees over the course of those 7 years. In many cases, I was learning from a mentee. They wanted me to be the mentor, but I was learning as much from them as they were from me. And that was part of how I framed my mentor relationships with them. Is I would say, you know what? I will be your mentor on the topic of how to run a great meeting. That's what you want me to help you with. I'll do that. But what am I going to learn from you? Let's talk about that. And that kind of relationship where I was saying, I bet I can learn something from you, was not just good for me because it meant that I was going to be curious and learning, but it was also good for them because it made them realize that they had something of value to offer me. So yes, diversity is important in the workplace. Diversity is not getting a whole lot of love these days, but the truth is the data is really conclusive that diversity helps in organizations and on teams. But age diversity is maybe the most important diversity on teams. And there's a reason for that. And that is because a young brain versus an older brain. Arthur Brooks, who's on our faculty at MEA, has written about this in the book From Strength to Strength. As you're young, your brain is fast and focused. It's called fluid intelligence. As you get older, you move from fluid intelligence to crystallized intelligence. And your brain thinks more systemically, holistically, and connects the dots. For all those reasons, having a team full of people of different generations means that you've got neurodiversity in a different kind of neurodiversity perspective, meaning young brains are fast and focused, older brains are systemic and holistic, and you get the best of both worlds.
Do you think in order to foster that kind of environment, you were talking about the collaboration, listening, understanding everyone has things to learn from each other, do you think that happens organically, or are there going to need to be workplace wellness programs like MEA type programs in the workplace to really make that happen?
Yeah, I mean, I've been fortunate because of the book Wisdom at Work becoming popular that I've been asked to give lots and lots of speeches in companies, lead online workshops with intergenerational groups within companies. So I think a certain investment by the company in this is important. But at the end of the day, this is a very individual process. You as an individual need to be open to being curious and respectful of people who are different than you, including those by age. So it shouldn't be a corporate edict. It should be a corporate opportunity and say, like, you can learn from other generations if you want to. It's probably good for you, but it's not a requirement.
Yep. And so you've graduated at MEA, 7,000 students.
Yeah.
So how do you think about scaling that platform? I mean, for so many people need MEA. I have 2 friends who actually attended your course. It was completely life-changing for them.
Yeah.
How do you see this vision getting scaled?
Well, I think the beautiful thing is that we have had people from 60 countries come and experience the program. So this is a global movement. And It was our alumni who said to us, hey, we would like to have regional chapters. So we have 58 regional chapters. I do think that the chapters are really where a lot of the rubber hits the road out there in the communities. Those chapters are where they have events. This Saturday, I'm in Austin and we're doing a picnic with 60 different alumni from Austin. And then we're doing service work out in the community. So how do our chapters help connect a modern elder who's 55 years old, who has left their career, but they want to do something new, find some young entrepreneurs like I did to offer their wisdom, but also to learn something. So I think a lot of this is just us as a public service announcement. We have PSAs, public service announcements, to tell you to not smoke. We have public service announcements to tell you to exercise. If you stop smoking at 50, you gain 4 years of life. If you start exercising at 50, you gain 2 years of life. But as we said earlier, if you shift your mindset on aging from a negative to a positive, you gain 7.5 years of life. But there are no PSAs about this. So that's really what we're trying to do.
And how does someone find a local chapter?
Well, you have to be an alum to do a local chapter. But if you're really curious about how to connect with the MEA community, following things you could do. There's an MEA private Facebook group. So just like any private Facebook group, all you do is you answer a couple of questions and you get on that. And then you can actually on that post articles, say, hey, I live in Columbus, Ohio. Anybody else live here? I'd love to meet some people. So that's one thing. Number two is on the MEA website, under free resources, there's a whole section of online events that we're doing all the time. Pretty much at least every other week, we have some kind of free event. And these events are a great way to connect with people because we do breakout sessions and things like that. So you get to know other people. I have a daily blog called Wisdom Well. It's on the MEA website and it's free. And so that's another way to connect with the resource.
I've heard it's an amazing hospitality experience as well. And wearing your sort of hospitality hat, when you look at a lot of the longevity clinics that are out there that are more clinical, because we have a lot of founders, investors, and so on listening to this podcast, what advice would you give to longevity clinics? What are they getting right and what are they getting wrong or missing?
Yeah, I've done some of the clinics. I went to Life, which is an amazing program. It's in Austria, a week-long program, and it's very medically oriented. And what I'll say is that what they're missing to some degree is some fun. They tend to be pretty clinical. You know, if they're in a beautiful location, that's great. But like, where's the fun? Where's the zest? Where's the joie de vivre? Especially in Europe, you should have some joie de vivre. I think that's a key thing. So with MEA, there are really 4 components to MEA that I think make it so successful. Number one is hospitality. You know, it's like a Four Seasons kind of luxury or boutique hotel experience. And that's my background. Secondly, it is a retreat center. And in a retreat center, there's a certain kind of thing you need to create, a safe crucible. You can't do this in a Four Seasons very well. If someone said, well, Chip, why don't you do these workshops just in a Four Seasons? Well, you're surrounded by all these other people who are unrelated, like who are there for some conference. It's like, no. Thirdly, wellness. For 28 years now, I've owned the largest spa in San Francisco, Kabuki Springs and Spa, and I've owned a lot of different spas. So wellness is integrated into it. And then finally, the fourth piece is really content. Our content is very much based upon the books I've written and the blog I have. But the idea of going to a longevity center and just learning about your microbiome alone without trying to help you understand the bigger picture of your life, to my mind, is for some people, you burn out on that pretty quickly because it's too technical.
Yep, it can feel very clinical and very impersonal, and it doesn't need to. So being in the seat always gives me great access to ask people about their own practices from guests who live really intentionally like you. So I'd love to know a bit about your own personal approach to longevity, those practices that you found really beneficial.
Yeah. So when I wake up in the morning, I meditate, and I meditate every day. I try to get in 10 minutes if I can, minimum, sometimes more. I do Vipassana silent meditation retreats at least once a year. I stack a habit around my shower. I do a shower in the morning, do my supplements and healthy stuff. And then I try to get at least 11 to 12,000 steps in a day. And usually I try to do it outside in nature. But I also stack my habit of saying 3 prayers and 6 mantras while in the shower. The 6 mantras I say 3 times each. So it's really 18 of those. And then 3 prayers, the St. Francis prayer, the Serenity prayer. and this 12-step prayer. And I do those because they just center me as I move into my day. I do swim. I do a little bit of yoga, do a little bit of weightlifting. And I'm pretty cautious about my sleep, meaning I am not just cautious, I'm rigid about when I go to bed. Even if a birthday party is being thrown for me, I go to bed about 8:30 or 9, because I tend to wake up really early in the morning. And
So you have a lot in common with Brian Johnson.
I do. I really like going to bed early. I also intermittently fast at least 2 days a week, and I usually skip dinner as opposed to skipping breakfast. I could tell you more about some of the things I do.
How do you think about balancing the pursuit of longevity with the desire to enjoy life? What would you advise people there? In your book, you write, six-pack abs costs a lot when you're in middle age. And
they're more expensive, yes.
Yeah.
A six-pack's more expensive as you get older. I'm talking about the amount of time you spend to try to actually create six-packs costs more time-wise at age 55 than at age 25. And so you need to just know there's an opportunity cost there. My basic belief is this. I'm a believer in long life learning. Lifelong learning means you can be learning photography at age 30 or 70, and that's fine. I think we should all promote lifelong learning. But long life learning is a subset of lifelong learning. Long life learning speaks to the idea of how do you create a life that's as deep and meaningful as it is long. And to my mind, it speaks to the art of living, the joie de vivre, vitality. How do you create a life full of vitality? I'd much rather live a 70-year life that was full of joy than was tragically cut short at age 70, than live a 100-year life that felt very labored and too stoic. I don't mind being stoic. I've actually got a little bit of a monk in me from past lives, I think. But the idea of being joyless and joyless striving, and that is what I see, unfortunately, from a lot of the people who are really longevity fanatics. It's a joyless striving, and that's not for me.
I think that's a really fair critique. Chip, I want to thank you so much for pulling up a chair to the Wellness Roundtable. And listeners, if you enjoyed this chat with Chip as much as I did, you can continue the conversation at Chip GPT. So Chip has this amazing AI tool on chipconley.com, and you can ask him any questions that I didn't get to today. So Chip, if people want to learn more about MEA, your books, can you share your handles, your socials, all that good stuff?
My handles, my love handles. That's, I got to the point in my life I have some love handles. Oh my God. Yeah, the handles are chipconley.com, CONLEY. At the MEA website's meawisdom.com. And my daily blog, I post on LinkedIn. So yeah, those are the places to find me and my books, and particularly MEA. And you can experience MEA not just from the physical campuses going to workshops, but we have online courses as well.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Now we turn to the Global Wellness Institute's Vice President of Research and Forecasting, Beth McGroarty, for some insight and commentary on what we just learned. Beth, welcome to the Wellness Roundtable.
Thanks so much.
So earlier this episode, we were chatting with Chip Conley, the founder of MEA, about all of the different concepts that we're seeing for midlife and beyond as people are living longer, having second and even third careers, and needing community and purpose as they navigate that second half of their life. So I'd love to hear your perspective on all of the different reports that you do, and a lot of it is touched on aging. How have we seen attitudes around aging evolve?
Yeah, well, I've been working in the wellness land for 2 decades, and I can say that when I started, the image of wellness was a hot, young, super fit white woman. Baby boomers have been such a force in the change, in the images and offerings in the world and wellness across those 2 decades since I started. The oldest baby boomers were 59 years old 20 years ago. Now they're 79, and they refuse to age. They don't feel old, and they don't want to be defined by age. So this has slowly changed everything from fitness to beauty concepts. In our trend reporting, you see it starting to percolate over the last decade. In 2022, we reported on how these, what they call new agers, would shake up the very idea of senior living. So, and also you see it in that wellness is now much more focused on different age stages, as evidenced by the recent untabooing and focus on solutions for menopause.
It's really exciting.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about longevity.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much new research about delaying menopause as maybe the linchpin to women's longevity, bringing hormone therapy right back square in the center, but maybe also with combined integrative approaches. I mean, I just think longevity solutions are going to get more gender specific with this kind of research. So.
Totally. So with these increases in lifespan, what opportunities are there for the wellness community to create new concepts for people later in life?
Oh my gosh, the opportunities seem endless. As you probably talked about, the world's aging at the fastest rate in human history. Far fewer people globally are marrying and having kids. It seems to me that everything's going to have to change. Just massive opportunities for the wellness world to try to rethink how to help people later in life, whether it's desperately needed new social wellness concepts to new real estate and community models that don't look like anything like what we used to call senior living. You know, one of our trends this year, 2025 trends, was about how longevity would completely redefine work in a new era where the fastest growing workforce age group is over 75. Unbelievable. So
wow.
Seismic changes are coming. How long we work, what roles are we going to fill? And it's all going to come down to maintaining the health and wellness of older workers. So companies are experimenting with all this stuff, just starting like flexi work, letting older workers work where they want, the hours they want. Mentoring programs where older workers share their incredible, deep experience. Reverse mentoring, which is creating much needed intergenerational communication in workplaces because employees now could be 20 and 85 and sitting across from each other at a desk.
It's wild. You've got 4 or 5 generations working together in an unprecedented way.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to longevity solutions, everybody says, always look at Singapore. They do everything first and right. They raise the reemployment age. They provide money to companies that are willing to hire older workers. They offer lifelong skills development, education programs for older employees. The trend that we wrote says if we don't create the solutions that put older workers on a path of longevity, our economies are going to fail. We don't have young workers. The wellness industry has a huge role here, and you're going to see things like new advisors that specialize in the wellness of the super valuable corporate older worker.
It's fascinating. And I think that the data is showing that half of the sort of above 50 or 60 population does not have enough money to last them for what is becoming a much longer retirement, because retirement was, I don't know, 10 or 15 years when lifespan was shorter. Now retirement could be 30, 40, 50 years. And so what, both from a savings perspective, but also like, I personally wouldn't want to be retired for that long. You know, I don't have enough hobbies.
I know when you think about 40 years, I mean, that's why everything has to be rethought. You can't work 70 hours a week when you're 80. But I mean, that's why the whole rethinking of flexi work, what kind of work older workers do, I mean, it's critical. But yeah, I always read those things in magazines like, how much do you need to retire it? And then I just like fall on the ground sobbing because, you know, there's no way I'm ever going to stop working.
Yeah, it's super interesting. My husband's uncle is a 90-year-old gastroenterologist who still works full time.
Wow.
And it's what keeps him going. So I think to your point earlier, Beth, the old age home of the past is not something that boomers are super excited about. Are you seeing any businesses emerge that are reinventing what a retirement home might look like?
I mean, I'm just not seeing nearly enough wellness concepts, just cultural models that are focused on helping people cultivate mindset and purpose later in life. Billions and billions are being spent on longevity, science, and breakthroughs. But who wants to live a long time without purpose and meaning? I mean, it's scarier than dying young. So, you know, you see the more lo-fi longevity concepts, Blue Zones communities, Blue Zones resort programming. They're focusing on the forces that drive happy, fulfilled longevity. And central to that is social connection and a sense of community and a real purpose in life beyond work. In the senior living space, I really like this company, Mather. They have 4 urban locations in the United States. They're based on the Mather Research Institute, which studies aging, interventions to having a happier aging. So it's research based. But their senior living communities, it's all about putting constant social connection and really deep educational and cultural programs at the heart of living in their residences. So outings to museums and art and music and a whole slate of wellness, and still having people working, I think, living there and making that easy and good for them. So I just think when you're talking about a 65-year-old and you're talking about a 95-year-old in this huge span, there's going to be such a huge reimagining of what we used to call senior living.
Completely. Beth, thank you so much for sharing your insights as always. Really appreciate you stopping by the Wellness Roundtable.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of the Wellness Roundtable. This podcast was produced by Emily Roberts and Ali Alkiza of Over Lunch. Music was provided by Mindstream. And a very special thank you to Susie Ellis, Nancy Davis, and the entire Global Wellness Institute team. As we wrap, it's important to remember that while this podcast is filled with valuable insights about the latest longevity science and innovations, it is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Our conversations are designed to inform and inspire, but should not replace the personalized guidance of your healthcare providers. If today's episode sparked your interest, please subscribe to our podcast, leave a review, and share it with friends. To learn more about the Global Wellness Institute, please visit our website, globalwellnessinstitute.org. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.